President just so happens to be a real estate agent and a broker. And one of the things she actually helped me understand is that when we're talking about housing, developers and realtors look at something called the area median income in order to establish what is affordable in most communities. Here's the dishonest conversation that's happening. When you're looking at communities that are lower income, they are not judging the area median income of that community. They're judging it by the city at large. So you're having a conversation about a city that can maybe afford 300,000, 400,000 housing, but then bringing that same standard to communities that can only afford maybe 200,000, 100,000 homes. So that's a disparity that we need to have an honest conversation about, is how we can make more localized AMIs to make housing affordable. The second thing we need to adjust and actually adjust and actually pay attention to is the fact that we have corporations, investment funds, venture capitalist groups that are buying out entire communities and then renting them out to first-time home buyers. That should not be allowed. The American dream is for individual families, not for corporations. And I am going to make legislation to make sure that that's no longer a thing. 3 or 4 years. So let me present to you all some numbers. If we wanted to raise all of the families that are currently underneath the poverty line in the United States, it would take a total of $177 billion, which in perspective is about less than 1% of the total GDP of the United States of America. That's well over what we make as a country. If we were to properly tax the 1% of residents and corporations that actually make 90% of the wealth in America, just not increase their taxes, not make arbitrary rules, but simply tax them and have them pay what they owe, that revenue would generate $175 billion. And this is exactly what I'm talking about when we say we don't have leadership who see the people beyond the politics. Because if we just had leaders who were willing to hold our corporations accountable and make them pay what they owe, we would not have such a large poverty gap. I understand that college isn't for everybody. It took me about 7 years to get my degree. I understand that not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody wants to open their own business. But everybody deserves to have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness with housing, fair wages, and a higher quality of life. And that cannot be achieved if we are dancing around the fact that we're not putting legislation forth to actually make corporations and the ultra wealthy pay what they do to this country. If they are able to get wealthy off of our backs, then we need to hold them accountable and make sure that they do what they need to do to make all of Americans wealthy. Chaos and making it really easy for us to be scared at this time, but I can speak to one specific policy that has really impacted the Houston community specifically, is his decision to eliminate the Jobs Corps department and making it that much harder for individuals who were expecting some type of training to suddenly be pushed out onto the street and not receive the support they need to actually get back into their communities and get that training they need. It is abhorrent for him to say that he cares about people, which we know is a lie. Let's just call it what it is. It is a lie. But for him to play in our face, to make all of these promises and then blatantly attack systems that actually uplift communities, systems like Medicare and Medicaid, and making cuts to where 700 million individuals will be removed from it because they're not able to keep up with paperwork. Making a decision to cut Jobs Corps and USAID, which helped us not only mitigate diseases around the world, but actually helped us build stronger relationships with communities across the seas. It is almost obvious that we have a president who is determined to destroy us from the inside out, but I do take it very personally that he decided to attack our most vulnerable population and making it that much harder for them to actually get economic development by attacking their ability to learn how to get jobs and making sure they get OJT. So that's my opinion. As much as I appreciate some of the responses from my colleagues, one thing I do want to clarify is that immigrants and immigrant communities are not leeching off of our society. If we're looking at Harris County alone, and let's have a real conversation about it. You cannot pay for anything in this state, in this country, without paying sales tax, without paying property tax, without having some of your income taken off by the jobs you work, whether it's under the table or over the table. That being said, if we're looking at Harris County alone, immigrant families contributed to $5.9 billion worth of tax in Harris County alone. And that money is also contributing to Medicare and Medicaid. And these are some of the same families that are paying into the system and not even getting an opportunity to engage in that system. So let's be honest about the conversations that we're having. And when we're talking about information and sharing it, let's share the correct information. One, when it comes to how we can get the money and the resources into our communities, the solution is simple. We need to have honest conversations about the corporations who are evading taxes. We have people who are afraid of socialism, but let's call a spade a spade. We are contributing to socialism for the ultra wealthy. Let's talk about the PPP loan bailouts. Let's talk about the bank bailouts. Let's talk about tax evasion tricks that allows corporations to not pay on billions and billions of dollars of revenue. There are resources that are made available to the ultra wealthy, which is coming at the expense of our communities, which is why we're not able to have control of our own systems, which is why we're not able to have housing, because property taxes are constantly being hiked up on us, although we are allowing corporations to have lower taxes or not even paying taxes at all. If we're going to truly pay into our community and pay into the future youth and make sure we can own our property, we need to make sure we're holding those who hold the purse coin accountable.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that question, Ms. Joy. And of course, I have to kind of play my card. Shout out to Pure Justice in the building. It is the best, yes, we got to give them a hand for them and for Northeast Action Collective for not just the work that they do in Northeast Houston, but all across the city of Houston. Truly, it's a pleasure to know you guys. When it comes to addressing the crime rate in the city of Houston, I am more of the mindset that you have to address the reason why the crime rate is actually increasing. And you can't just throw everybody in jail. That's not going to solve the problem. You can't put more money into a police budget. My bad, that's city level, not federal level. Anyway, you have to be able to work in these communities and make sure that they're getting the resources they need. You don't rob just to rob. You rob because you're lacking the funds necessary to serve your life. You do the things you do because there's a lack somewhere. And so my way of addressing crime rates in the 18th Congressional District is to make sure we address those things, those social determinants of health that may impact their ability to be more prone to causing crime. What does that mean? That means securing more housing. That means bringing more jobs. That means bringing more workforce training. That means making housing laws that are clear, that doesn't discriminate against justice impacted families, and making sure they can actually secure housing at a fair rate and not be held to a higher standard just because they've been justice impacted. You do those things, you decrease the rate of recidivism, my apologies, and you make it a lot easier for families to find stability. When it comes to bail reform, bail is just an excuse to keep poor people in prison. That's about as plainly as I can put it. If you put the bail too high, the people who can afford to commit the crime are the ones who get released. And so I want to make sure that when we are talking about bail reform, it's equitable and it's one that does not penalize the poorest of our community and keep them going in this vicious cycle of going in and staying in jail when they could easily be continuing their lives outside of that system. 30 seconds. So we saw that main issue yesterday, unfortunately, with the abysmal drainage that's in CD 18 and in Northeast Houston. My plan to address that is to address the individuals who are blocking funding, getting to the city of Houston and to Harris County in general, and using my congressional bully pulpit to make sure that those who are in charge of dispersing those funds do it in a timely manner so we can actually get the infrastructure we need so that we don't drown after every small storm.